I see you. I see you. Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate you guys very much for coming by and taking a look at my video. So I have the round 6, game 3 between Wesley So and Magnus Carlsen. Very much anticipated. You know, anytime the world champion is playing, you know, in a game, it's gonna be hot. And actually, we have 2 world champions. So as you guys know, Wesley So is the Fisher Random 960 world champion currently, and Magnus Carlsen is the classical world champion. So it is a clash of the titans. And so for all of my people in the Philippines, magandang umaga, kumusta na, mabuting pagbati, almasal tayo, mabuhay, ingat lagi to you guys, Messiah Kong Makita Kang Muli. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by, taking a look at my stuff. And anybody who is coming from Norway, God Morgan, and Allo and Tack for coming by and taking a look at my video. Appreciate it very much. If you guys are ready to go, like I'm ready to go, let's take a look, see what we have for the game. All right, so we got E4, E5, knight to F3, knight to C6. We're just going to run through these moves real quick. Bishop to C4, bishop to C5. We got C3. So we have the Giuoco piano, as you guys know. And so we see knight to F6 and we got D4. So we have the center attack of the Giuoco piano. And so this kind of comes out into like it's kind of like a little bit of a gambit, but it's not really so because you end up getting your pieces back. But it's just kind of a little, you know, gambity way to play. We got pawn taking D4. We got E5 in between move. We got D5 counter attacking the bishop, and then we see bishop to B5. After we see knight to E4, we see pawn takes D4. So as you guys can see, it wasn't a gambit, but for some people it might be kind of a little complicated way to play, especially if it's the first time they've seen it. But of course, these players have seen this many times. Bishop comes back to B6. We have knight to C3. We got castles by black. We have bishop to E3. Got bishop to G4. Got H3. Bishop comes to H5. And then we have rook to C1. Now, we're not seeing this move coming up, but we're just anticipating that the knight would take. We want to take back with the pawn and have the support of the rook behind the pawn when we put C4. So that was, you know, why we see rook to C1 played. And we have bishop to A5. Now, this is the novelty of the game. As I always say to you guys, whenever you have multiple bishop moves in the opening or multiple knight moves, you usually get to the novelty pretty quick. And so, you know, we've definitely gotten off the beaten path now. Now, something I do want to mention that I'm going to reference at the end later on in the video is the fact that bishop was on B6 and now it was on A5. So you have touched it twice. So we'll see if that becomes relevant at any point in the game. But it is a chess fundamental thing. So you guys hear me talk about chess fundamentals a lot. You know, touching pieces multiple times. Of course, if it's attacked, you have to touch it. But there's some situations where you don't have to touch a piece twice. But, you know, black is doing really well because, you know, all they need to really do is get their queen out. So they're actually a little bit further ahead than white is here. But this isn't really a true pin because, you know, we're going to castle and, you know, we're going to be taken back with the pawn, like I said before. So, you know, Wesley So is ready for anything that Magnus Carlsen is trying to throw at him. So we see castles by white, bishop takes C3, pawn takes C3. So as you guys can see, you know, we have the possibility of pushing this pawn here, getting things opened up, maybe moving the bishop over here, attacking this little weak point in black's position. On a good day, as Yasser01 would say. So we got knight to A5. We got G4, we have bishop coming to G6, and then we have knight down to E1. Now, knight down to E1 is a really, really nice idea that Wesley So has come up with. And something I do want to point out, it might kind of seem like white is playing a little bit risky, you know, because like, you know, they kind of have, you know, their king opened up a little bit. But something I do want to point out, or something you want to be paying attention to when you're playing your own games, is if the opponent isn't really in a position to attack you, you have a little bit more of a possibility of kind of playing, not kamikaze-like, but you have a little bit more opportunity to make some moves that, you know, would be seen as kind of breaking principles and stuff like that. Like, you know, you generally don't want to really move the pawns in front of your king like that. But like I said, this knight is over here on the rim. This rook is not being used. The queen has not been developed yet. So really all you kind of have in the vicinity are this bishop and this knight. And, you know, you're not going to, you know, you're not going to get with those two and be doing any crazy attacks anyway. So You know, you are setting up some nice tactics and stuff for white. So we see f6 by black, and we got f3 by white, and then we see c6, a nice little counterattack. Now the thing I will say, like I said, as far as black is concerned, is you know, f6 is kind of opening up the position a little bit too early. Because, you know, like I said, you don't really have all your pieces mustered. If you have, like, you know, the queen kind of hanging out over here somewhere, you know, some rooks ready to kind of, you know, take advantage of this open file, that's when the timing is just a little bit more ripe. And you really still kind of do need to do something with this knight over here, because as you can see, it's really, really far away from the king. You want to have it like, you know, kind of like right here or something like that, you know, on the king. Anyway, so, but c6 is a really nice little counterattack. So we see bishop to d3. And then we have knight to g5. But as you guys saw, that knight really didn't have a lot of squares to go to. f6 really kind of took away one of his, you know, flight squares. So the computer actually really liked knight to d3 instead of c6. It wanted you to try to kind of go here, but, you know, it doesn't look too great on the square. So I don't know. The computer's thinking about something that I can't think about, obviously. So we did see bishop, knight to g5. And then we see a series of trades. We got bishop taking g6, pawn taking g6, bishop taking g5, then we have pawn taking g5. And we have the dreaded triple pawns. There are very, very few cases where you have triple pawns where you actually enjoy triple pawns. One good thing about triple pawns is that it does open the file up for you. But that's probably the only thing that triple pawns are good for, is opening files. Because usually triple pawns makes it really, really, really hard for you to move. As you guys know, you can't push these pawns without pushing this pawn. So it puts you in a pretty tough situation. So positionally, I'd rather be white. Give me white. Gift me white. So we got queen coming to d3. So, you know, Wesley So says, hey, man, you know, I see this weak pawn over here. Let me just go ahead and attack it directly. Let's get it off the board. So we got knight to c4. So we have solved the issue of our knight being on the rim. It's not grim anymore. It's looking a little bit nice on this little outpost square. So, you know, that's definitely something there. We have queen taking g6 immediately. Now, something I will say. It's fairly similar between queen taking g6, but the computer really, really wants you to be more patient with the capture and to kind of build up your defense before you do so. So the computer really liked rook to f2 immediately, and then after rook to c8, coming knight to g2, because, you know, the computer is just really, really wanting to make sure that you're protecting all of your penetration points for this knight. So the computer's play centers around trying to basically, you know, kind of blunt this knight as much as possible before you do go and take this pawn. But the way that Wesley So played is, you know, pretty human way to play. And there definitely are no drawbacks to this move. It's not like, you know, what the computer was saying was just way better. So there's not really, you know, you just literally just want a pawn as white. So I mean, you know, let's go. But you know, the computer's always gonna want you to play some weird, patient, crazy way that humans just really don't usually play like that. So we do see queen coming to e7. You know, just making sure that we develop the queen and kind of getting some, you know, some attacking possibilities for white mitigated. So we see rook coming to f2. We got c5, which is very, very normal. As you guys are familiar, probably, if you had a pawn here on this square, you would be looking at a very similar structure to like French defense. And c5, also like a Caro-Kann situation, c5 is like the most logical move to play. You're trying to get this trade happening so that you can, you know, get you a point to kind of like attack in the position of white. So we got knight to g2, rook a to c8. So as you guys can see, you know, Wesley So is pretty much playing, you know, the way that the computer's like, hey, play this way. He's just kind of doing it in a little bit of a different order. So rook c comes to f1. Like I said, there's zero drawbacks to the way Wesley So is playing. Magnus Carlsen is actually doing pretty well. After we have pawn takes d4, pawn takes d4, you know, the position is pretty bad for black, but you do have some good points. You know, you have all of your pieces developed. You have this really, really nice knight in the center of the board. So it's kind of an octopus right there. So you do kind of have some issues, you know, white can actually get into if they're not careful. So we see rook over down to c6, giving a counterattack on the queen. We got queen back to d3. And then we have rook over to a6. Now, what I want you guys to go ahead and do right now is pause the video, and you guys hear me talk about, you know, when you have a weakness in your position, trying to get rid of the weakness. You guys hear me talking about when you have a bad piece in your position, trying to improve the position of your piece. You know, so looking at the entire board, and looking at, you know, kind of what White's pieces are doing. What would you feel is a good improving move? Because Wesley So is looking to try to improve his position even better than it already is. So what move can Wesley So play that will greatly improve his position? Go ahead and do so real quick. Okay, cool. So for those of you that noticed and that are familiar with how rooks best operate is on open files. So this should tell you that, you know, they got these rooks here on this file or whatever, but they are kind of blocked by this pawn. So the best thing that you can do in the position right now is actually push F4. And F4 is really just wanting to open up these rooks and make them as influential as possible. And of course, if you know you have pawn taken and stuff, you got these pawns taken, and you got this knight activated, so you're attacking this pawn here. You're ready to get queen coming into G6. You're threatening all kinds of craziness going on. So, you know, this is, well, of course, the rook would have to move for you to go queen to G6. So don't go queen to G6 with the rook sitting here. So don't do that. But as you guys can see, now you have opened this file, so your rook is a lot more activated. So, like I said, Wesley So's position was really good already. But he was trying to make sure he looked for a way to just increase and improve his position even more. And F4 perfectly did that. So backing up to what we had. After rook came to A6, we did push F4, but we do see rook to A3. Rook to A3 is putting a little counterattack on this pawn over here, and it's trying to knock white off of its plan. But, you know, white goes queen to G6, so that was when you can get that move in. Rook takes on H3. We have F5. Now, pawn taking on G5 was actually, like, crazy stronger. You know, it's just forcing the trade of these rooks. You know, of course, you can't just move the rook away because you're going to be looking at rook to F7. So, I mean, it was looking really juicy for white. But we do see F5, and with just the clear threat of just pushing F6. As you guys can see, with these rooks behind, with these rooks behind these pawns. This is a really beautiful just structure, just like the space game is definitely being won by Wesley So. So after F5, we do see king over to H8. So we're prepared to meet F6 with pawn takes F6, swinging queen to H7. And as you guys can see, we are threatening checkmate on H1. So you got to kind of be a little bit careful. And then there's also like different little ways you can go wrong in this situation. So there's two really different possibilities in this situation. There's queen taking H7 with check, which would, you know, bring the rook back. I mean, you can also just go ahead and just take with the king. That's a possibility. And then now, actually, though, everything is equal, but you do kind of have some issues as far as trying to develop, you know, get this knight back into the game and stuff like that. You might have to kind of bring knight back down here, stuff like that. So you kind of gave yourself a little bit of issues, but there is a very strong, like absolutely crushing, like winning move on the spot. And Wesley So does play it, and it just forces the situation. And it's really beautiful. And it's actually queen to G7 with check. Now, unfortunately for black, his king is stalemated. So he cannot move his king at all. So he is forced to trade queens. And this allows pawn to take on G7. And it really doesn't matter what you do as black. I mean, you know, the best possible probably situation is for you to go ahead and take on G7, because as you guys can see, this literally just gets you a queen, and also this does as well. If you want to be really funny, you can probably promote to a knight and be good in the situation here too. If you just want to have some laughs, some giggles, but yes, this forces the situation. So it is after queen to G7 with check that Magnus Carlsen does resign the game because of what I just showed you. There's really no way out of this situation, and you don't even care that checkmate is actually literally coming on H1. So this was a really nice win by Wesley So. And going back to the point in the game, it makes you kind of wonder, is bishop to A5 wasting a very crucial tempo? Be careful with those tempos, guys. But anyway, that is the end of the game. Go back to the final position. There we have it. But I appreciate you guys very much. For all of my people in the Philippines, I'm going to try to make sure I get this. I think I've been doing a lot better, but trying to get the rest of these good mornings. Okay, so I have Maayong Buntog, Mayad na Agahan, Ninebag na Bigat, Masantos Yakabosan, Marhe na Aga, Buenos Dias, Maayong Aga, Mapia na Uma. I have Kapia I think Kapia Kapa New Dios. Yes, Kapia Kapa New Dios. And then I have the new one that I just learned, Mayap Abak. So I got those. I'm doing pretty good, I think. I'm getting through them. I'm having to kind of think for a second, but I'm getting through them. But I appreciate you guys very much for coming by. For anybody who's coming from Norway or who does speak Norwegian, TAC, appreciate you guys very much for taking a look at my video, and I will see y'all next time.